absolutely do not. Biggest rule ever. I think really what contributed to me getting the position. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, or if you've been watching our videos and you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. We can see how many of you guys are actually subscribed and not subscribed, and about 75% of you are not subscribed. Yeah, we just called you out. Please subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. So today I'm going to be talking about how I got my internship at CNN, but I'm also going to be mentioning some general tips for how to do well in interviews for internships and jobs. So in the past, I have interviewed for quite a few internships and some, real full-time jobs. So I feel like I've had some pretty negative experiences interviewing and more positive ones, and I've definitely learned some things over the years, over the course of my college career, so hopefully these tips will be helpful to you. So I was an intern at CNN with the opinion team the first semester of my senior year of college, and I first stumbled across the internship online. I saw that the website they use, it's called Turner Jobs. It might have changed now because I know that CNN is now owned by Warner Brothers. They kind of had like a change of ownership when I was interning there. They were kind of in the process, so that might not be the website they use anymore, but you can just literally Google CNN internships, and yeah, I applied online through their specific portal. I only had to send in my resume. I didn't actually ever write a cover letter. They didn't require it. I don't remember there ever being an option to put one in. I sent my resume in, and I do remember maybe a few weeks later, maybe like 2 weeks, it wasn't a super long time, but it wasn't like the next day, I got an email requesting for an interview for the position, and it was a phone interview. And I, of course, immediately said yes, and we set up a time. So now to the juicy stuff, the interview part. So mine was a phone call. It was not a video chat. It was a phone call, and the time slot I was given was for 15 minutes. So it was going to be a pretty brief call. And, at this point I wasn't sure if this was a first round interview or, what I was kind of going into. So I just kind of prepared as best I could. So here are some of the questions that you are typically going to get in an interview like this. So the first one is going to be about how your experience in the past aligns with the job. How what you've done before will actually help you and make you a great candidate for this role. So I think it was basically phrased as, tell me about your experience with journalism, kind of, because this role was with the opinion team, so it was in the kind of writing, publishing side of CNN. And this is really crucial for these kind of interviews because you need to be able to convince them that what you've done before is totally preparing you for this new job, and that you have all these skills built up that will make you an advantageous person for the role. So that was the first question that I had to answer, was just walk through my resume and kind of talk piece by piece. How does this specific instance of what I did match up to what you need me to do in this role? So the second key thing that you need to know for these kind of interviews is about bringing the passion. You need to be so excited, happy. You need to display that as best you can. So my interview was a phone call. It wasn't a video chat, so I couldn't show that I was smiling. I couldn't kind of have those visual representations of how psyched I was. So I really just had to bring the passion and just basically don't sound like you don't want this job. And that sounds very obvious, but I do think that to some people, interviews kind of are work and it's just something you have to go through, but you need to be treating it as if you're so excited to be having this conversation. You need to be saying, oh, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to even interview. Really be bringing the passion and the excitement into everything that you say. The third thing you need to know for these kind of interviews is that they are going to be expecting that you've done your research. So they might not ask you kind of an explicit question like,
what was our most recent article about?
It might not be that obvious, but they might ask you some leading questions in which they're expecting you to show that you've done your research. You need to let them know that you're so engaged with the role and with the company that you know the basics and you've looked into it, and that kind of goes along with the passion side of things, because if you really are genuinely interested in, having this internship or this job, it should be evident in all of the research you've done. You should be dropping some knowledge on them that shows that you really have done your homework prior to the interview. And the fourth major tip was to ask questions. So typically at the end of any interview, the interviewer is going to ask you, okay, so do you have any questions for me? And absolutely do not, biggest rule ever, do not say, nope, I'm all good. That is huge red flag. You should never say that you don't have any questions. I really firmly believe that you should always have a question. But that doesn't mean that you should have a question that's very obvious or that's already in the job description or already on their website. So a bad question for me, for example, would be, what is CNN's mission statement? Because their mission statement, I could Google that and look it up myself. You don't want it to be a question that you could answer easily for yourself. You want it to kind of be a deeper question that shows that you're interested in learning more about the role. You can ask the interviewer a question about their role. You can ask them, how did you get into this position? What do you think the best part of the job is? What are some things that you think that will be the greatest takeaways from this position? That kind of stuff. So definitely have a question under your belt and know that it's coming. That part should never surprise you. It should not be a surprise to you in an interview that they ask you to ask a question. So back to my CNN interview. Like I said, in my interview, it was a very straightforward interview. They asked me about my experience. I was asked about name one project or one article, something I've written that I think is my best work that really sticks out in my mind. Like, what is something that you've done that you're super proud of, basically? And I do think that that is also kind of a typical question for, especially if you're interviewing for like a writing job or a publishing job, because they want to know what in your portfolio is something that you're really passionate about. Another kind of side tip for these kind of interviews is to try to find a common ground with the interviewer. And I think this works just in everyday life and conversation too, is people like to talk about themselves and they like to find something that they share with you because it gives you that common ground to kind of relate to each other. So for example, in my CNN interview, my interviewer mentioned that he saw that I had studied abroad and he was like, oh, I went to Oxford University too. Boom, from that kind of point on, we talked a lot about Oxford in general, and it was just this cool common ground that led the conversation in a different direction, where it didn't actually sound so much like a Q&A where the interviewer is asking me questions. It did turn into more of an authentic conversation where you're just talking about a topic that you both have experience with or that you share in common. So if you happen to notice that you guys have something in common, definitely kind of, talk about that a lot. To summarize my top tips for interviewing with CNN specifically and for landing a CNN internship is to do your research, ask questions, show passion, and find common ground when possible. And of course, link your past experiences with the current role. So really drive home why what you've done previously makes you an ideal candidate right now for the job. After that phone call interview, a few days later, I ended up getting a call back from the same interviewer, and he called me and just basically told me over the phone that I was chosen for the role and would I like to accept. It was super exciting. I said, of course. And yeah, I was really, really excited. I honestly did not think I would get the position because I can only imagine how many other people applied for it. I think really what contributed to me getting the position is that common ground. I feel like it was just kind of a conversation I had never really had in past interviews. I've never talked to the interviewer in a way that made us seem more like equals, where we kind of had this shared experience. So I think the fact that we had both went to Oxford and kind of bonded over that, I think that really helped. So I definitely stand by finding commonality as a really good tip for maybe landing a internship role. After I signed the paperwork and officially accepted the internship, I went to like an intern orientation day, and It was a catered breakfast. We had a lot of people come and speak about CNN and its mission. We had people let us know what was expected of us in the role, all that kind of stuff. And it was honestly pretty low-key. I was kind of stressed about it, but I got to talk to the other interns and make some friends that way, some familiar faces, because in Manhattan, the CNN kind of headquarters, there's so many floors and you're really spread out. And in my role specifically, I was the only intern. It's not like I had, you know, co-worker interns really. So I think that that day was great because I could meet the other interns and kind of get to talk to them. Also, an added bonus of interning at CNN is you get a bunch of free stuff. Very often there's catered food in the office that's left out for people. There's catered lunches. I ended up getting a mug, a water bottle, a pair of socks, a notebook, and a t-shirt, all for free, just like as CNN swag, which obviously it's advantageous to them because I'm literally advertising CNN everywhere when I use that stuff and wear that stuff, but it was still fun. I don't know how this works in the DC offices or the Atlanta offices, but in the New York CNN office, we got a little official badge and we like swiped in and then like the thing opened and we could get in, and I don't know, it made me feel fancy and I still have it. The views are amazing. I was on the 18th floor and it was just, I don't know, it was so pretty and you could just really see the city from a high vantage point, which was really cool. So now I'll just briefly go into the pros and cons of my CNN internship. A con for me would be the commute because of where I was living on my college campus and because of where the office was. It was kind of an annoying commute, like it definitely could have been worse, but I still had to leave my dorm pretty early to make it to work on time. That's not a reflection on CNN though, that's just like something you have to deal with. Another con, I guess, for me was that I had to buy a bunch of work clothes because I had never really had an internship that was this formal or this much of a big deal really, so I ended up spending a little bit of money on having to buy like nice work pants, dresses, you know, office apparel, all that kind of stuff. And then once again, another con that's not a reflection of CNN is just that I had to balance working my internship with school, which of course I signed up for. I made that decision, but it's always tough, and both semesters of my sophomore year I had an internship while in school, so I was kind of used to it, but it still is difficult to juggle. Also, the way my schedule worked out is I ended up working weekends, so I would work on Sundays.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
But like, what can you do? Pros. There were many, many pros. First of all, you are meeting so many people in an industry that you are probably interested in if you have the internship. So you just have exposure to people and you can just talk to them. And that is so valuable to have people right at your disposal. I mean, everyone on your team, at least for me, was so kind, so willing to hear my questions, to give me feedback. And that is a huge pro, is just the experience and the amount of growth you'll have through this position. A second pro is that what I noticed with CNN internships and how they treated their interns was that they were super willing to have you go for a day and work in a different department. So I remember one day my supervisor got an email asking anyone's intern kind of free right now and available to help out with something. And I wasn't working on an assignment, so he was like, do you want to go do this thing in a different department? And I was like,
Yeah, totally.
so I went and did it, and it was really cool. It was working on a show for Anderson Cooper, and I had to sit and do audio tests with them, and I got to see how they filmed it. I got to see the stage where he films and the desk and all that kind of stuff, and it was actually so cool, and that's just something that you're not going to get anywhere else. After I did that, one of the PAs for his show came up to me and was like, if you ever want to shadow me, if you're interested in this field of work, we can set up a date and you can shadow me. So that is so awesome. You can get experience in a division of CNN that your internship is not directly related to. Third pro, I kind of already mentioned this, is all the free stuff and the free food that you will get. So that's just a nice perk. Like, it was definitely the fanciest internship I've ever had. Then the last thing that I will say is that I think you should always apply to whatever job or internship that you want to pursue, even if you feel like it's out of your league. When I first stumbled across this Turner website listing all of the CNN internships, I hadn't had a big name internship like that before, so I totally thought that I would never be someone who would be picked for one of these internships, but nonetheless, I still applied. I went through with the process, I prepped for the interview, I gave it my all, and now I have this awesome internship under my belt. I have, I can put CNN on my resume, which is such a cool thing to be able to do. So that is my last and final tip, is just apply to things that you feel like maybe you aren't even necessarily qualified for, because you might just be underestimating yourself. So go for those really, high-level internships and jobs, because you never know what could happen. I really hope this video was helpful. If you need any clarifications, please comment them below, or if you have questions that I didn't mention, please comment them below too, and I will respond to them. Also DM us on Instagram. We always check our DMs and we always respond to them. And of course, keep leaving video requests, because we essentially do every single request we receive. It just might take us a little bit to get to it. Please subscribe and like, and we will see you guys in our next video.